Welcome back to Tiny Grimes' set review of Solforge Set 4. Today we're looking at Tempys. One of the legends released here was Staff of Varys, I suppose. This is a really interesting card. It basically takes Fervent Assault, makes it, well, I guess Fervent Assault isn't the right one. Was it Aerial Mobility or something? Essentially, you give them mobility for the turn, but you allow them to battle an extra time. This is a really interesting card. It's only soft level gated as well. So, I'm really torn on this card of trying to figure out where this works best. Who do you want to give mobility for one turn and battle an extra time? That's really where the question comes in. But the level 3 is really strong. Basically, each creature battles an additional time on your turn. So all of your guys are battling twice. And it has mobility, but the question is, are you really building this deck to go to level 3? If your goal is to use spells to battle twice on a turn, it seems to me that your goal is to beat them quickly. And therefore, this level 3 version is fairly irrelevant. And it seems like a card you're not just going to be playing to the board, you're only going to be playing when it is available to you. So unless you're leveling it with, say, an AT build, which is quite viable, it seems like it's going to be hard to get the spell to level 3 anyway. So it feels like what we're really looking at is it's a cool underdrop level 1 that you can get a guy to be able to do a whole bunch of damage, especially if you go all in with buff spells and try to really make that guy do piles of damage. So I haven't been a fan of the card so far, but I have been looking for spots to use it. Brimstone Tyrant to me is the most interesting upgrade card in the set. Most of the cards I'm pretty unimpressed with. But the fact that you get to do board-wide damage and you control it is really interesting. It's a Firestorm with a body that you don't have to trigger the fire. I'm very intrigued by this. It certainly combos well with something like Thundersoar or with Dozer to be able to wake him up. And you can play it, since you're playing on your turn, you overwrite the one card that would kill anyway. You hit your Dozer, your Thundersoar, their whole board, and then you play your second card. And so it really doesn't have that much downside for you. And if you have a good board, well, then you just use it as a 6/6 trading off the board, or trading off a guy, and you don't upgrade anything. The problem, of course, is that to be able to make this guy work, you're going to have something on the board you want to upgrade. And so what is this going to be? Is this going to be a Kataru Sprite? Is this going to be something that has battled and lived? I'm not entirely sure. I've tried this card a couple times already. The problem is the decks I've been using it don't have quite enough removal to handle some of the out of control threats in the metagame. So we'll have to see. I really think this guy is going to have a spot. I think there will be a deck that will be built around him. I'm not sure if that deck is available now, but in the future we will definitely see this guy have a place in the meta. Saberfang, this card fits into much of what Set 4 is about for Tempys, which is being aggressive, punching them in the face so fast that they die on player level 2. Now, you probably don't care about playing a Saberfang and having it battle twice as a 2/1. But there's a lot of other options at your disposal. A really basic one could be play Saberfang, play Patriarch, and suddenly he's quite a bit bigger, and Patriarch hits him at all 3 levels on level. So that's interesting. And there's all kinds of other things you could do. You could play Explosives on him. You could play any other card that busts this guy. So you have a whole bunch of options for playing him and doing a pile of damage. The question is that worth it? Because he's going to die to whatever they're doing with only 1 health. So he's could potentially be a part of some hyper-aggressive constructed deck. I haven't seen that deck yet. It feels like you have to go too all-in on this guy when there's other guys that are somewhat similar in their aggressiveness that aren't as fragile as this card. So I don't think this card is going to see constructed play for now, but I like the design of it. Lava Fused Acer is a really interesting card. So all the creatures you control get +3 if there's no other creatures across from them. This brings up all kinds of crazy issues with battle math, and guys are dying and they're constantly shifting power levels. And you're able to do stuff like if you had this guy with the card we just looked at, the Saber, suddenly that Saber gets a lot stronger. Even an under-leveled Saber, if he's a 2 and you have the Osir out and you drop him down in an empty lane, he's an 11 attacking twice. So you just hit your opponent for 22 by playing a level 3 Osir and a level 1 Saber. And then if you have another Saber Fang next turn, bam, that's another 22. That's 44 health from terrible level 1 cards. So this Osir is interesting. I think there's a deck out there with him. I haven't fully investigated his build space, but I think there's something there. I know I saw Turkus running this card with Maiden, which is really good, buffing a card like that to get extra use out of it. I think there's all kinds of possibilities with this card. This is one of those cards where I really like the design. I'm not sure how to take advantage of it yet, but I like it. I think there's going to be something there. Borean Windweaver is probably the best card in this set. I know Wegu usually gets that credit, but I don't think Wegu is the best. I think it's just the most annoying card and the most difficult card. This card is the best card. So good that I worry about its power level. It's that good. You take a card and you give it an amazing body, and then you allow every other card to have mobility. That is terrifying, not only for the current play set, but for going forward. So you can couple this card with all kinds of things. Anything that benefits from moving is incredibly strong. So Nether Shriek becomes a card that's pretty strong to incredibly strong. Something like Stormbringer becomes much stronger because you're able to just, move it, get its trigger. In the past, if you wanted to move guys, it was much more dicey. Their bodies were smaller, they were more fragile, the benefits were lower. This card is really good. You can just play it as an underdrop. You can have, say, a Nether Shriek 2 on the board, and you're like, ooh, actually I have a target for it. You know what? I'll play this Windweaver. It's under leveled, but it doesn't matter. It's still going to hit. It's still going to help out the Nether Shriek, or it's still going to help me move my Thundersoar over. It's still going to be able to do any number of things. Having it be a 12-9 on level 2 is incredibly strong. Just incredibly strong. A 12-9. If it had been a 9-10 on level 2, I would have said this card is really awesome. As a 12-9, it exceeds the power level in my opinion. But it's a really strong card. Violent Outburst is a really cool card, but I don't know if it's any good at all, and I tend to think it is not. But if you can get in a spot where, all you need is like 10 more damage or something, you can throw down a guy, make him aggressive, and win with it. I can't come up with a way to make this card good, but it's interesting, and I wonder if maybe in the future there will be a way to make this card good. I'm just not sure. I'm very interested in seeing how this card works out. All right, Totem Bound Berserker. This is another weird card that I have no idea what to say about it. I mean, it certainly has an interesting function where as long as you put it in an empty lane, you can basically trade with whatever you want on the board. Right, so they're blocking, say, your Gox that you want to live, or your Phoenix Ash that's about to pop, and you just move the guy in front of you, and you kill it. The downside is, you are always trading. There's almost no scenario in which you're going to live with this guy, unless you're dropping the level 3 to take out, like, their level 1, maybe a level 2. But his level 1 and 2 defense is so low, he's always going to die. So, I haven't found a deck in which I desperately wanted to keep some guy alive to the point where I'm playing him. The main reason is because there's a lot of spell removal right now. So just by moving a creature out of the way, in no way ensures that that guy is going to live. A spell could easily jump down and kill him. So I'm not really sure that he has a function in the meta right now, but he's interesting, and he could be good in a deck specifically built around him. But I don't think he's ever going to be a card you just drop in a deck because he's a solid card. I think there's better cards for that function, but he's very interesting. Sparktail Manticore is another one of these guys that's aggressive, looking to win fairly quickly. This might be a guy that would work better with some sort of buff. Again, we have Patriarch buffs at 1, but not on 2 and 3, so that's a little bit dicey. He'd probably be better if he was like a 3/5/9. So he could be buffed, but he can be buffed by any number of other cards, explosives, and he has a big rear. So there's a decent chance this guy comes out, does a bunch of damage, actually lives a turn. He has mobile, so he moves over. He hits him again for more damage. I mean, there's a chance that in an aggro deck, this guy is pretty good. His attack values are a little low at 2 and 3, but I don't know. He's interesting. Again, I don't think he's going to see any play in Constructed unless there's a deck that can specifically harness this confluence of really interesting cards. Chant of Dragon Watch deals X damage to each creature an opponent controls where X is your rank. So this is really cool. It's a Firestorm that's only against your opponent. Problem is, it's practically garbage at level 1. Like, are there really that many spots where you're like, yes, I hit 2 of their guys for 1 damage each? Probably not. What you're probably working on is like level 3, and even then the cards are so big. I just feel like this card is not viable because it doesn't do enough damage. It's interesting. I like it, but I don't think it's good. I don't think I would play it. Elementalist worries me. Remember when we had Windcaller and he was level gated? And if he wasn't level gated, he would be disgustingly good. Well, this guy is Windcaller, and he's a Yeti, and he's not level gated. Now, admittedly, his stats are worse than Windcaller, so from that perspective, maybe he's not as good. But man, this guy does sick things for you. I had a deck where I was running him, Nether Shriek, Windweaver, and just had all these options for moving around my Nether Shriek. I had a couple other cards I'm trying to remember that did really interesting things when they moved. So you could do stuff like Stormbringer. You could have the Evoker around where you're moving guys around. Essentially, you have all of these methods for moving cards. Let's say you have a Thundersaur, he's stuck in a corner, not anymore. Boom, you bring him out, he does damage. So he's different from Windcaller, who actually can sort of stick around, and Windcaller's level 3 is pretty good. This guy is simply a utility card that does some damage. Now he's also a Yeti, so if you're able to make him work in a Yeti deck where you're moving around, say, your Thundersaur, then you can have him down as a Yeti, you put a Warlord down, he does 12 damage across from it. And the beauty of this guy is you can play him, you have your level 3 that's blocked and is enormous, and you just play Elementalist and move him anywhere on the board. It's a really strong card. I haven't found a place for it permanently in my decks, but I've been toying with him. When he works, he's disgustingly good and wins games. But when you don't have something good to couple with him, he's 100% useless in the decks I've been building. So I feel like the key is going to be to find a deck where he can thrive with most of the cards in the deck rather than just a couple of the cards in the deck. So, in other words, he kind of worries me because he's not level gated, but at this particular time, he's not overpowered. He's just can be very useful. Tyrannic Ambusher. If you put him in an empty lane, he gets +2/+2, +3/+2, +4/+4. So essentially, if you're able to empty lane him, he's a 7/7, 11/11, 17/17. Pretty good, but not, I don't think, good enough to warrant playing in Constructed. I say that with hesitation because maybe he is good enough. Maybe in a deck where you're just playing giant guys, he's viable. The problem is, are you going to have empty lanes? Because if you don't have empty lanes, he's pretty much garbage. So I'm not entirely sure what to say about this guy. I wonder if maybe in like a mono Tempys deck he would be good, because they don't have quite enough guys to be able to play cards that they want to play. Something like Stormcaller, if this is able to empty lane, it levels better. It might be better than Brawler if you're able to empty lane it. So essentially, you're looking at this card and you're saying, maybe in a mono Tempys big dude deck, this guy does have a really good place. I haven't used the assault mechanic much, and so I don't have a good feeling for how often this doesn't work out. and you're not using as a blocker because he's just a 5/5 at that point. So you really have to be able to use him aggressively. So I'm very interested to see how he works out. Again, with the way the current meta is situated, I'm not sure he works, but I'd like to see a spot for him. Storm Spear is really interesting. If this did face, this card would be sickeningly good. Thankfully, it does not do face because it scales really well. And it's this free cycle where I was playing an AT deck and using this, where I was able to actually play multiples on a turn to control the board. Especially if you have like invokers down, you're doing a tremendous amount of damage to the board if you're able to loop multiples of these with invokers. The problem is I'm just not sure that that's what you want to be doing. It might just be better to play dudes to the board than just... If this was flexible and could do damage to creatures or face, this card would be amazing. Because you could do something where you like level it to control the board, to get to the late game, and then couple them all together to just whomp them in the face with this card. But alas, that's not how it works. Spark Soul, this is really interesting because you can give him aggressive by upgrading. And I haven't tried him yet, so I'm not sure how well that's going to work. So essentially the scenario you'd have to envision is that you're either playing tokens to be able to overwrite them so that you can push through the aggressive damage, or you're envisioning situations where you're battling, winning, and having the guy left over. Because if you battle and don't win, and you're just both at 1 health, and you overwrite that guy, then Spark Soul's just going to trade with the guy in front of it. So it has to be a scenario where it's able to upgrade and take advantage of its aggressive text. I don't think we're going to see that very much in Constructed, to be honest. I don't think we're going to see that much of the upgrade mechanic in Constructed because it's so inefficient. It's really difficult to make that work unless you can find a really good token deck. Now, I may be totally wrong, and there may be somebody who's brewing the most amazing token upgrade deck and able to use all these mechanics and really do amazing things with them. I haven't seen it yet, but we'll have to see moving forward if we can get there. So, could be an interesting deck, especially in an aggro deck. It's quite a bit of damage. I mean, being able to drop down on level 3 and just boom, 15 to the face, that could end the game. If you're running an aggro deck and you make it to level 3, that may be the card you need to just outright win. So, again, Tempys has all this push towards aggro in set 4. And I haven't seen anyone be able to use it yet and harness it well. I haven't been able to, but that's not to say there's not something out there. So I challenge you to make an amazing aggro deck and come on my stream and beat me with it. Alright. Nargath Warrior. He is what he is. Kind of a boring vanilla card. We'll never see play in Constructed. Probably has some value in draft. Firelight Hunter is really interesting. He's basically a Magma Hound that does much more damage, but has to overwrite a guy. No, but has to empty lane. And so the problem is he doesn't get to trade with things because he has to empty lane. His health is low enough to where he'll probably just get eaten. He won't be able to trade because they'll just position a guy who can eat him in front of him. And so it's this weird card where you're like finishing off a card when he comes in only to be eaten. And so are you really going to be able to get card advantage out of this guy? I don't think you will be able to in Constructed. And Draft, I could see this happening much more. But he's interesting. I like all these cards. Like, I much would prefer a card like this that lets you do damage to creatures off of a body rather than off of a spell. So now we have this guy, we have the Barbarian. You know, there's this chance that we can reach this critical mass of guys that come in and do damage where you're going to end up with a full board of guys because you're dropping guys in, doing damage to everything, and then because you have this full board now Rage becomes really strong. Rage of Kadras, that is, with this deck. So we'll have to see if that becomes a reality. I kind of doubt it, but it's an interesting possibility lurking out there for any of our inventive deck builders. So that wraps up my take on Tempys for Solforge Set 4. Be sure to go ahead and take a look at the review for the other factions and look at the link below for all 4 of the factions. I will see you next time.